that's essentially what we do. My background is as an academic, and my background was working with Trent, Nottingham Trent University, but I sort of grew up in Broadway, really. I spent years and years and years in there, in the bar, talking, drinking, smoking, sometimes even outside, about the sort of the creative community and taking part in that informal economy, that sort of gift economy, love economy. So when we set up these professional business development network-oriented projects, it sort of had to be in Broadway, I think, because that is the place where it tends to happen. That's the sort of village hall, I think, of creative, not or at least one of them. So that's a bit of history of where I come from, what I've sort of been doing. The reason I wanted Kim to come along with me today, partly, is because I think Kim's a really good embodiment of that relationship. Kim is a student of Trent as an undergraduate. She graduated 2006. She's an extremely efficient barmaid in Broadway. I can vouch for that. They even made you shift manager, I think, a little bit. She's graduated in inverted commas from Broadway in the last year or two and has gone back to Trent as an MA student. She's taken part in the Hive, which is the business startup facility at Trent. So in all sorts of ways, I think Kim's a really interesting example, embodiment of that whole sort of network, relationship, village hall, community thing in Broadway and Trent. It's interesting for me because Broadway is almost becoming part of the campus of Nottingham Trent University, and I think that's potentially really exciting stuff because it means that students get a foot in the real world whilst they're still students, whatever the real world is. My research and this book stuff has come out of almost, I guess, becoming a sort of anthropologist of that tribe, being part of that tribe and growing up inside that tribe, but having the sort of professional social research skills to step back from it and reflect on it at the same time as being part of it. So that's what I've been trying to do. The reason I called the book that I've called it what I've called it is because I tried to say that this network, which I guess is why I'm here primarily, is to share with you some of my ideas about how I think networks work, how we can get a handle on networks, is to talk about this notion of a creative ecology. I think it makes more sense, certainly makes more sense to me, to talk about these things as an ecology rather than an economy. I think that, economy with a capital E tends to imply jobs with a capital J, and contracts with a capital C, money with a capital M. That sort of professional business stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think at the same time, and I think this is another key difference between the creative industries and other industries, is there's a very, very intimate set of relationships that tend to happen in and through creative industries. And I think there's a whole series of mutual interdependencies. So I think thinking about that as an ecology, as in the natural world ecology, and how everything tends to be much more interconnected with each other, begins to make more sense for me, and I think begins to offer up all sorts of other metaphors if we unpack that biological stuff as a way of getting a handle on this stuff. So before I talk about the book and hopefully play some games that are in the book, I think we can identify things like, for instance, symbiosis. How creative people tend to have, quite often, they have very intimate symbiotic relationships with each other in their creativity, in their business, or the space between the creativity and the business. I think quite clearly there are natural habitats at work, this place being one of them, watering holes where different species of creative people congregate and trade ideas, trade experiences, and maybe do business together. Catalysts and enzymes are an interesting one for me if we unpack the biological anatomy. How one thing can happen, a festival or a particular event, which enables lots of other things to happen around it and kicks off lots of other things and it circulates around. So the whole biological metaphor has been something I've been sort of toying with and playing around with and exploring as I've gone along this sort of research and trying to say some things about this. The book is an attempt to take some of the publications I've been involved in, which have been far more academic, and the language tends to be very stodgy when you get to academic writing. You've got to reference everything, you've got to qualify every argument. An attempt to sort of take some of those ideas and translate them out so it becomes hopefully a bit more enjoyable, hopefully a bit more playful to read, and hopefully therefore a bit more useful. So this is the bit where I start to sound like a bit of a salesman. I don't mean it like that. I just thought what I would do for the rest of the time is to just tell you some of the things that are in the book, because it seemed to me that would be the best way of sort of unpacking what I've got to say, I guess. The reason it's called Fish and Horses and Other Animals to start with is there's an old Japanese proverb that says that the last animals to discover water will be fish. Because fish are in water and they have nowhere else to be, they have nowhere else to stand, they can't get outside of water, they're the least able animals to understand the thing that they're in. And I think that's a really interesting and really quite powerful sort of idea. It's useful for all sorts of reasons, I think, and I find myself increasingly using it. But I think for people such as us, it asks you to stand back from yourself. It asks you to stand back from your creativity and your position in the creative networks and actually begin to sort of get a handle on it and your relationships with it, and to reflect back on it, essentially. So, it's beginning to ask you those sorts of questions. The horses bit is more prosaic. The horses bit is just asking people to think about horses for courses. Some of the more background academic research I've been involved in was about motivations. What motivates people in the creative industries to do the thing that they do? The sort of standard economic talk, it tends to assume that we all have the same motivations, i.e. money. That's why we're all in business, isn't it? Well, I don't think it is. I think certainly in creative industries there are a whole series of motivations at work, whether that's the respect of your peers, or the fact that you just want to do this stuff and hopefully make some money along the way. There's all sorts of things going on. So there is no one best way. There is no one best way to be in business. There is no one best way to grow your business. It depends what you want from it. There is no universal answer. So thinking about horses for courses seems to make sense when you're thinking about creativity in business, because it seems much more multifaceted from what they tell me.